We used to go visit an older gentleman when I was a deacon in a little country church in Batesville. And he would get out and come over and mow. Since we were out in the country, we had a great big place to mow. And he'd come bring his tractor out once or twice a week, or every couple of weeks. And he'd mow the churchyard for us. He'd make sure everything was cleaned up. But you could not get him to come to church. But when we would go to visit him, he always welcomed us in. He's as nice as he could be. We'd sit down and we'd talk about it, and we'd invite him to church. And he said, my daddy was a deacon and helped build that church. And that man went to his grave thinking he was okay because his daddy helped build that church. And him, and as far as I know, his sons, none of them had a personal relationship with Jesus because they think their grandfather fought their way in because he was a deacon in the church. Folks, there's a lot of people that think they're going to heaven that have never asked Jesus into their heart. And I don't care what you do, I don't care how much you read, how much you study, how much you watch preachers on TV. If you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, if He's not in your heart, you cannot have fellowship. Because He doesn't fellowship with the world like that. You've got to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ to have fellowship with Him. And then, once you get that settled, then you need to have fellowship in the ministries of Christ. What are these? The ministries of Christ are preaching the gospel. And I'm not talking about standing here like I am right now. I'm talking about when you walk outside here and people see your life, or you talk to someone in the workplace, you're preaching a sermon. You always heard that saying that you may be the only Bible some people read. It goes as far as sermons too. Sometimes you're the only sermon that a person ever hears is watching your life. There used to be a song by one contemporary Christian artist that said, I'd rather see a sermon any day than to hear one of the ears. When we're truly serving Jesus, we need to be preaching the gospel with our lives. And then not only do we preach to them, that means to share the gospel, to get those people saved, to get them to turn to God. Once we get them there, then somebody's got to teach them. And in the last chapter of Matthew, Jesus says to go out and preach to all these people. And then it says to teach them to observe all things. How's a new Christian going to know how they're supposed to live and how they're supposed to act if we don't teach them? If they just come in here and they may be genuine, they come in here, they go to the altar, and they really get saved, and then they have no fellowship with other Christian people, and they don't have anybody teaching them, how are they supposed to know how a Christian acts if we don't teach them? That's our job, is to teach them what Christ wants to know. And then they were obedient to the Lord and His commands. Boy, in today's time, that's not even a good word to say, is it? Obedient. You obey somebody. I did a wedding several years ago for this young couple. And I have a Free-Will Baptist handbook that's got 4 or 5 wedding ceremonies in it. But I typically use the same one because I like it, and I think it's a pretty fitting wedding ceremony. And when we got to church for rehearsal that night, this girl said, I'd like to sit down and look at the book and the vows and all the stuff that we're going to repeat and we're going to say tomorrow. And I said, I gave her the copy that I had made for her service. Her and her girlfriend sat down at a table over there, and I could see them with a pencil here on this. No, this one's out. No, we don't want this in there. We don't put this in there. And when she brought me the thing back, everything that said obey and honor and obey and all this stuff, she had crossed all that stuff out. She said, I'm not getting up there and making vows that I'm going to obey him. Guess where their marriage is at today? Yeah, it doesn't exist. The world looks at obedience as a dirty word today. We don't want to do what other people tell us to do. What makes us think we want to do what God tells us to do? And I've read a lot that says that in our country, this really started back in the 60s when we had the hippie movement and the Vietnam War and all you had some good patriotic young men that was going off the war, and then you had the hippies that protested it. And they wanted to rebel against society. They wanted to rebel against authority. You know, for so long there, when you reached a certain age, you crossed over that invisible line there that made you part of the establishment. And, you know, young people just hated to get to that point. Well, I'm way past that establishment line, and I still don't like to obey. I still want to do things when I want to do it and the way I want to do it. But you know, that's not how we do it, certainly. We need to do it in His way and in His time. He told those people when He was ready to ascend into heaven, He said, you go back to Jerusalem. You go get closed up in this room and wait. Isn't that just what you want to do? My mother used to drive me crazy because she was so hyper. When a group of people was getting together to go somewhere, if they weren't right there when it was time to leave, she was bouncing off the walls. Because she wanted to go. She hated to wait on me. Guess what's happened to me over the years and I've gotten older? I'm just like her. I don't want to wait on somebody else. I want to do everything in my time. If I come up with a good idea for the church, I think we ought to do it when I want to. And you're all sitting there laughing at me, but if you're honest in your own mind, if you come up with something that you think is good for the church, you want to do it when you want to do it. We're all guilty of it. We don't want to wait. What would have happened if they would have went back and said, well, there's no, Jesus is gone, there's no use in us waiting. Let's just get out and do this on our own. They would have made a very grave mistake because they would have left without the Holy Spirit. And Jesus knew what was coming, so He said, just go wait. And when the time comes, you'll know it. And then you go do this in my way, at my time, and it'll work out a whole lot better. It works the same way with us today. We need to be together in one accord like they were in the Old Testament. And there's going to be some things that one person does that another person doesn't like. There's going to be some songs that some people don't like. There's going to be songs that people like and other people don't like. There's going to be videos that some people don't like. There's going to be programs that we have that some people don't like. You're never going to please everybody. But when it really comes down to it, does it make a hill of beans whether we like every little part of the service?